Bullseye.
Officer is in need of assistance. Officer is in need of assistance.
You are listening to Henry Media Network in the United States of America. Don't forget to follow us, share us, and download episodes. Remember, this is the right place to hear very powerful messages and music for Black America. Because we know that your message might wake up another sleeping giant. So, contact us today at how.enterprises@yahoo.com, y say again, that's how.enterprises@yahoo.com, and get your music, message or information are by millions for a generous donation today.
Probably swagged out, laid back. Him and easy talking about how it was way back. Black Heaven is a place where
Mamie Till Mobley, the mother of Emmett Till, once said, 2 months ago, I had a nice apartment in Chicago. I had a good job. I had a son. Whenever something happened to Negroes in the South, I said, that's their business, not mine. Now, I know how wrong I was. The murder of my son has shown me that what happens to any of us anywhere in the world had better be the business of all of us.
I know who giving knowledge up there, Tupac. He looking down like what happened to this hip hop.
Get your message or business promoted on John Henry Media Network. Make contact today. Use his email address, jahu.enterprises@yahoo.com. That's jahu.enterprises@yahoo.com. Again, that's jahu.enterprises@yahoo.com. For specific details on submitting your audio to make it happen, it will be aired on our very next episode for a small donation of your choice. So let's make it happen right now.
Black in Time Enterprises, celebrating who we are by honoring who we were.
Dorothy Irene Height always made it her business to be in the room, whether it was working with Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune, or advising Martin Luther King Jr. and Roy Wilkins. After a lifetime of activism, she received both the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Bill Clinton in 1994 and the Congressional Medal of Honor from President George W. Bush in 2004.
Early in life, I learned that it was important to have some goals and to have a sense that you were not just a worker, but that you had a mission, and to have a sense of a life's work. And I chose to put my life's work in the direction of equality and justice.
Height served as president of the National Council of Negro Women for 40 years and was a longtime board member of the YWCA, where she began her career as a social worker. I spoke with her in 2003 when she published her autobiography, Open Wide the Freedom Gates. In it, she recalled the history she'd witnessed, including her first meeting with a future civil rights icon.
I first met Martin Luther King Jr. when he was just 15. He'd come to Morehouse College as a gifted student, and he was living with I was living with Dr. and Mrs. Mays, because at that time I could not be accepted in a white hotel. And Dr. Mays wanted me to meet his favorite student. And it was really a tremendous experience to sit there and hear a 15-year-old talk about whether he wanted to be a doctor or into law or medicine. But you had a sense of purpose in him. And 10 years later, 1955, he responded when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. And we all know the rest is history.
Height was often one of the only women in the room or on the stage at pivotal moments in history. Here she's seen standing to King's left during 1963's historic I Have a Dream speech.
I think I was born a feminist because I think all my life I've been proud to be a girl and to be a woman. But it was a very significant experience to be the woman member among those men.
But her involvement did not end there. In 1964, she helped create Wednesdays in Mississippi, which sent interracial teams of Northern women to Mississippi to discuss racial justice with their Southern counterparts. Known for her trademark hats, her sharp memory, and her astonishing tirelessness, Dorothy Height never quite retired.
So long as God shall let me live, I want to be out there working to help to see what needs to be done and making whatever contribution I can make, doing it not for myself but for others, not by myself but with others, and for the betterment of us all. And I hope that as we leave this ceremony, all of us will feel that new sense of commitment and to go forward and to do it in a spirit knowing that we do not work alone. I was born in 1912. And 4 years later, which you know was just on the beginning of moving toward World War I, but also it was at a time when there were what they called transportations from the South, where black people moved from the South for greater opportunity. My father was a painter and building contractor, and my mother a nurse. But my father had the idea that he would do much better, and it proved to be true, in Rankin. So when I was 4 years old, I moved to Rankin, Pennsylvania. But I think it was the kind of activities that we had that got me started. And later on, some women came and organized the YWCA, and of course I was quite a joiner.
Yeah, you served with distinction with YWCA. In fact, it was through that relationship that you first met Dr. Woodson, right?
That's right. I first met Carter G. Woodson when I came in 1939 to be the executive of the Phyllis Wheatley YWCA, and I was just around the corner at 9th and Rhode Island, where he lived. And Dr. Woodson would come every evening, because at that time, there was no place in the city except the Union Station and the YWCA cafeteria where I was, that a black person could get anything to eat. And Dr. Woodson used to knock on my door every night, and we would have dinner together, and he would talk about the things that he was concerned with. And what you're doing here in Black history was really at his heart. And he talked about it all the time, and why, what he said, we have to deal with the miseducation. And the miseducation was not only of white people, but of black people. That we were taught that we were slaves and so on. We were never taught of our African heritage and the fact that often we were kings and queens who were made slaves, but that we never even knew what we had done in this country. So that was, I used to say every evening, well, I'm going to have a history lesson.
During that period that you came in contact with Miss Bethune?
Well, in 1937, I was working at the Harlem branch of the YWCA, and I had the assignment to escort Eleanor Roosevelt, who was then in the White House, to a meeting Mrs. Bethune was holding. And it turned out that it was the National Council of Negro Women. And after I got her into the meeting, Mrs. Bethune said, "Come back, we need you," and I've been back ever since. But it was that she was in Washington at that time was also a major force, because Mrs. Bethune was the first black person to have an official relationship to a president. Booker T. Washington, who we have here, was always called upon, but it was not an assignment, it was not a position. Mary McLeod Bethune was the advisor on minority affairs. And so that to me was a growing experience, working in the daytime for the YWCA working evenings and weekends with Mrs. Bethune. Well, it was a tremendous experience because Mrs. Bethune was clearly a black woman, but she felt so good about herself that she helped you. As a child, I was fairly shy, but when I worked with Mrs. Bethune, I came to understand the importance of asserting yourself and of what you believe. One of the stories that I always like is Mrs. Bethune never would call for an appointment with the president. She would call Mrs. Roosevelt and she would say, "Mrs. Roosevelt, there is such and such a problem. You know what? The president needs to see me." And that's how she got the
And she got the appointment.
And she got the appointment.
How about
But she also would never let race, she would never accept to be belittled because of her race. I remember she told a story of being on a train, and a white conductor came and looked at her to take her ticket. And he said, "Auntie, where's your ticket?" And she said, "I looked at this white man and I asked him, 'Which of my sister's sons are you?'" And he moved on. So that she had a sense of humor, and she knew how to cut through things. And that to me has been very helpful, because I don't tend to deal with trivia and stay on little things and gripe, because I learned from her that you don't get very far. I would like very much to see our younger generation who have inherited open doors take more time to learn their own history so that they will see how they build on what has happened.
Dorothy Height was 98 years old.
I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot no deputy.
You are listening to John Henry Media Network, the right place to hear valuable information to increase your melanated mind's altitude. Contact us at jahu.enterprises@yahoo.com. We encourage and invite you to submit your newfound and valuable information for review and to ultimately create your own episodes and shows, right here with John Henry Media Network in the United States of America. I say again, our email address is jahu.enterprises@yahoo.com. We look forward to hearing from you today.
The sheriff, but I swear